Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Aaron Hamburger. I'm your Zoom master for this evening, and I am also the membership coordinator for 31st Street Swing Left. So before I give you a brief introduction to 31st Street, I just want to remind you that as you're listening, please leave your questions in the chat. You'll see the chat box at the bottom of your screen. So just go ahead and do that. And I will be keeping track of those as we go along. And then at the end of our formal presentation, we will do a Q&A session with your questions. And of course, if you would like to receive our email newsletters from 31st Street Swing Left, just go to our website, which I'm going to put in the chat right now. And I will be more than happy to sign you up. So for many years, I was not an especially political person. In my other life, I'm a novelist and a creative writing professor. But after 2016, I knew that had to change. And after shopping around for a political group to join, I found 31st Street Swing Left, which is its own chapter of the National Swing Left organization. And I immediately knew it was special, unlike any other group out there, and for the following 4 reasons. Number 1, first, there's our sweet spot strategy, which you'll hear more about from our founder, Lisa Herrick. We like to say that we zig when other people zag, or we find those sometimes under the radar causes and campaigns that need our attention and where we can make the most difference. Second, we believe in targeting campaigns where we think a little bit of early money can go a long way. We want to invest our money carefully, where it will make the most difference, which is why our fundraising guru, Mary Pence, has been working so hard to put together events like this one tonight. Third, we rely on careful, smart political analysis, thanks to our political analyst, Jim Shelton, whom you're going to hear from tonight. He's going to explain to you our power up strategy, or reverse coattail strategy, to beat Trump from the ground up in key swing states like North Carolina. And I have to say, time and again, Jim has been proven right where the so-called political experts have been proven wrong. For example, in Virginia in 2017, Terry McAuliffe, the governor at that time and former Clinton campaign manager, predicted we might flip maybe 5 Democratic seats in the legislature. Jim said we'd flip 12. We ended up with 15. Or during the 2018 midterm elections, when we won 9 out of the 12 House seats that Jim chose for us to target with major financial and/or canvassing support. And Jim again defied conventional wisdom, which said maybe the Democrats could flip the House. He predicted we'd get 40 flipped seats, and that's indeed what happened. Fourth, and finally, this is so important for 2020. We are focused on registering and motivating low turnout Democratic voters to get to the polls. Let's face it, in 2020, there aren't going to be many undecided voters. We all know what we think about President Trump. If we want to get rid of him, we've got to get more of our people to the polls than the other side gets of theirs. And Jim is going to tell us more about our strategy to do just that. You know, our democracy is hanging by a thread this November. And it's funny, I've been to a few of these fundraisers and I keep trying to reference something from the news. And it just seems like every day there's a new indignity that just puts us more and more on the brink of a totalitarian state. It's really quite scary. But we are going to win because we have to win. We have no other choice but to do all that we can. So thank you for doing your part by being here tonight. And I'm now going to turn the mic over to our founder, Lisa Herrick. Lisa?
Hello, I'm right here. Still here from 2017, and we're still going strong. I'm a clinical psychologist, like Aaron. I did not do anything in politics before Trump was elected. Always focused on families and individuals, not on states and countries. But like probably everybody here, I woke up in 2016 and realized that I had not been paying attention. I had been complaining or worried or anxious, but I had not actually given a thought to being active in protecting our democracy, because I just never really thought about it at all. But starting in 2017, I felt like the time for being passive was past, and something that I had never done before was jump into politics. I had no idea how to do that. From a Facebook post, I started with a house party of 30 people. The swing left mission was very simple. Flip a district that has a Republican, that is flippable, and elect a Democrat instead. From that house party of 30 people, we have grown to be over 900 members. And we've been very active with two arms of our organization ever since 2017. We have a fieldwork arm, and we'll tell you more about that later, where we knock doors, and when COVID hit, we started doing everything we could do from our own homes. And we have a fundraising arm, which is part of what we're doing tonight. And the focus has been, since 2017, simply to flip Republican seats Democrat. Pick seats we can flip, pick seats that are not foregone conclusions, and flip them. And we have been incredibly successful. We focused on Virginia in 2017 and 2019, and as you all know, Virginia is now a blue state. We believe we need as many blue states as we can get from the ground up, from the local candidates all the way up to electoral college votes to vote in Biden and get rid of Trump. So our focus has remained the same. But in 2020, we are focusing on getting out the vote. We were incredibly successful in 2018. We raised over $1 million. We knocked over 30,000 doors. And in 2020, we feel pretty confident that we sort of have a magic potion. We have a secret sauce, and it seems to work. And we also feel like we have an incredibly powerful group of people who are motivated. And whenever we ask for a certain amount of money for a candidate or a cause, our members give what they can at the level that they can, and it all makes a difference. And the people who can't give money give their time. So we have an incredibly active 900 people group, and we feel like we're going to be very powerful in this year that counts so much. The last thing I'm going to say before I hand it over to Jim Shelton to explain to you exactly the nuts and bolts of what we do and why we're doing it and what we're doing tonight is that over the last several weeks in our country, in our world, I feel like I have another moment of becoming aware that I was not paying close enough attention, and another moment when I have become aware that I need to do a lot more than talk and think. I need to do a lot more than register my horror and my fear. I need to continue to be incredibly active, and I feel grateful every day for 31st Street because it is my therapy. It is my therapy that makes me feel like I am not powerless and I can make a difference because I'm part of this army of people that will not quit. So I'm really glad that you are here. We welcome you if you'd like to be part of us going forward, but even if you're just a guest tonight, I'm very grateful that you're here because no matter what you do, it's going to help. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim Shelton to say more.
All right, thanks so very much, Lisa and Aaron and our host. So yes, I'm Jim Shelton. I'm a retired epidemiologist. My career was in global health, and I think that was a very useful thing for me to spend most of my life on, and I'm very grateful for that, but I've pretty much left it behind me. And now I've shifted those skills to doing political analysis and work and so forth. And it's deadly serious, but it's also very rewarding. So I'm going to show some slides so that I can get the message out that I want to get out to people, because it's, to me, of course, fascinating, but also a little bit kind of counterintuitive in some ways. And we'll begin with a summary, because that's a good way to kind of get it all out, and then we can circle back and make the points in more detail. So why the North Carolina Legislature? Well, first of all, North Carolina is vital in all three of the most important things that I think are important to us. In fact, we call it a triple word score to some extent. Presidency, the US Senate, and two chambers, both chambers of the legislature. Secondly, as Aaron mentioned, something to understand that we really believe very strongly, although not all campaigns really sort of are oriented this way, interestingly, but turnout of supportive voters will really be the deciding factor in the election. There are very few swing voters, certainly at the state and national level. That's part of our reasoning behind where we're going. Another key point, and this is a wonderful point, it's a fantastic point. It's a redemption in a way that there is now massive funding for major candidates across the country, the Senate, the House, and it's really great that Democrats are so motivated and have been donating money a lot for many months now. So that's an important thing to know, but also to realize that at some point that money reaches a point of diminishing returns. And a lot of that is because at the margins especially, almost all of it is going to go for television, which is really of negligible marginal value because there's going to be so much of it. And I'll make this, I'll provide some more evidence of that later on. And it will also be tend to be focused on swing voters, interestingly. It's great that people are doing that. I hope they still continue to do that. But the fact is, it's really, we think there's better places to get better leverage. Okay, so here's the sort of bottom line. We really think that providing money now to underfunded legislature races, in this case, North Carolina, is the best way to get a significant number of turnout voters, low turnout voters that otherwise wouldn't vote, thereby providing support for all three of these objectives, because those voters will then vote for Democrats when they do vote. We call that the power up or reverse coattail strategy. And as it happens, we have selected a great North Carolina legislature slate just for you to do that. Okay, now to give you a little insight into kind of the reasoning that we try to apply, or we do apply to these situations, try to be very strategic, look for the overlooked kind of situations, the high leverage things, you can call it, and we call it zigging when other people are zagging. Secondly, we are evidence-based. I spend a lot of my time looking at quantitative evidence, but also qualitative evidence, talking to campaigns and candidates and so forth, reading blogs. We're also nimble in that we expect to change. And in fact, we've already changed this slate a couple of times as certain candidates have gotten enough money, we think, and other ones have come into view that we want to help. At the same time, we stay focused. There are a lot of things going on, and you can sort of get diverted into worrying about one thing and another, and that's fine, but we try to stay focused on what we think we could do something about. And then lastly, playing to win, which is part of the strategic approach. It's so much better to win than to come close in terms of, for example, flipping legislature seats. And one of the realities in these kinds of situations is that very often there are a few candidates, they're kind of at the top of the pile, if you will. They're the most attractive, they get the most attention. You know, they're running their own races as hard as they can. They're kind of like leading lights. But for example, if we want to flip 6 seats to win this North Carolina legislature, and actually a few more if we can, we don't want to necessarily support the first 3 or 4 candidates. We want to move down to the lower ranking ones, because those are the ones you never really know who's going to win in that kind of situation. And these are winnable races that we're putting on the table if they get enough money. And it's a matter of sort of statistics that enough of them will win, that will win overall. Okay. So somehow, all right, so let's talk about the presidential map. And this is actually pretty fluid right now. Many of you may know this. I hope you do. But just to recall the Electoral College map, Hillary won 232 electoral votes. She lost these three up here in this famous northern wall that didn't hold: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. So at the moment, I feel very good about Michigan, fairly good about Pennsylvania. That would get us to 268, and we need 270 to win. I have felt that Wisconsin is very iffy. It's possible it may go our way. There's a poll today out of Marquette, which is a really good pollster, that has Biden up by 9 in Wisconsin. Now that's an outlier, but I'm feeling better about that. These other states, Florida, Iowa are also in play. Arizona and North Carolina are the most sort of pivotal in my view. The other states are actually in play also: Georgia, Ohio, and even Texas. I mean, we should be so lucky that the dam might break and, Trump might actually be routed. But the fact is, these polls are very encouraging right now. I like polls, I believe in polls, but polls are not destiny, in my opinion. And if we, again, part of our focus is we want to focus on North Carolina. If we can win those 15 electoral votes, it's very hard to see how Trump can win. And we definitely want to win by more than 2, given the amount of time it's going to take for the election to take place, potential shenanigans with the Electoral College that might occur. So again, North Carolina is quite pivotal. Now, switching to the Senate. Senate's extremely important also, because if we don't win the Senate, as we saw from Obama's second term, nothing really is much going to happen. None of the great things we want to have happen are going to happen unless we win the Senate. We've had a very narrow path to victory in that right now there are 47 Democrats, 53 Republicans. We are almost certainly, unfortunately, going to lose our beloved Doug Jones in Alabama. That means we have to net 4 just to tie. At the moment, the polling is looking great in Colorado and in Arizona, and pretty good in Maine. It's up for grabs in North Carolina. We're ahead by a couple of points. So North Carolina actually is the linchpin. We also have potential in Iowa and Montana, by the way. And the point is, we really would prefer to have 51 or 52 seats, and not just 50 that the vice president would cast the deciding vote for. There are, again, other states that are up for grabs, and we'll have to see if that comes. But at the moment, North Carolina is actually the pivotal race just to get to that 50. Okay, so now we're going to come back to this point about the money. And this is some data. It's the most recent official data. It's actually from the last quarter. We'll get some more for this quarter relatively soon. But my view is that this trend is going to increase even more than it has, in a way, looking at where the puck is going to be. What's happening is that Democrats are considerably outraising Republicans in terms of direct funding for these Senate races. And that's because they're very visible. And there are a lot of people that, that get upset about and get motivated about what's happening. And they look around and they can see these Senate races and they donate money to the Democrats. And that's great. But our view is that, again, there's a point of diminishing returns. Some of these Republicans, by the way, do have war chests that actually have more money than the Democrats. But the Democrats are going to be either ahead of them or very close, I'm convinced, relatively soon. So we need a better opportunity for the marginal dollar because, again, a lot of this is spent on television. Now, why do I say that? Here's some evidence from it, but it's actually from the arena of independent expenditure. So there's actually more money that gets spent on independent expenditure by the PACs than there is in these campaigns directly. And to take our North Carolina example, this is information from Reuters a couple of weeks ago, although it refers to last March, saying that the super PACs for the Democratic and Republican Senate races said in March, they're investing a combined $47 million in ad buys in North Carolina this year, more than they had planned for any other state, at least at that point. Okay, so there's 2 points to be made for this, or 3 points. It's a lot of money. North Carolina is very important. These people get it. But also, it's going to go for television. And a couple things that I saw this week from Arizona, put both of these up at the same time. The League of Conservation Voters reserved $1.5 million in TV time for beginning yesterday for an ad campaign against GOP Senator McSally. And on the other side, a conservative group, One Nation, has launched what Politico reports is $1 million TV, radio, and digital buy, mostly going to be TV, in my opinion, supporting the other side. So the point is, there are dozens of these things, and they're the television viewer is going to be bombarded, to the extent there are television viewers still, and young people don't watch television that much anymore. They're going to be bombarded, and they're going to be sick of these ads, and most of them will be on persuasion. Okay, so let's turn to North Carolina more specifically. And I want to impress upon you that the climate in North Carolina, there are people in North Carolina on this call, I know, and I defer to you. And I know that, as something of a newcomer, as somebody who's been working at it hard, I just want to get across the point that North Carolina is really a purple state. So it has an increasing population rapidly, and that population is increasingly diverse and increasingly blue, especially in the Charlotte and North Carolina and Triangle area, but also other parts of the state. The sitting Senator Tillis is very unpopular. And in contrast, the Democratic Governor Cooper, who's also running for re-election, but is in very good shape. He's very popular. He was popular before the coronavirus, but is even more popular now. And he will have a positive effect, a positive coattail effect to the entire slate. And Trump only won North Carolina by 3.6% in 2016. So this is not, a state like Alabama or Wyoming or something like that, where he really won overwhelmingly. And the current polling again has Biden ahead by a couple of points, and Cunningham also ahead by a little bit more than that. So it's right where we want to be. We want to be where it's tough, where the things are close. That's part of the strategy. Democratic turnout in the March 3rd primary was particularly strong, kind of a bit of a blue wave going on there. The other thing is that in 2010, the Republicans basically took over the state and kind of launched a stranglehold on the state, including a supermajority in both houses of the legislature. But there's a very smart set of leadership in both the Democratic Senate and House membership, the caucus. And they have engineered over time a really good comeback such that they only need 5 seats in the Senate and 6 in the House. And the other thing is that there's been also significant redistricting. This was court-ordered redistricting for racial discrimination. And that's significant. It's not a wonderful thing, wonderfully positive, but it is significantly important for the Democrats. So the climate is actually good right now. All right, so now let's talk a little bit more about this power up strategy, and just to kind of drill down, what are we really talking about? And it's really not that complicated of an idea, actually. The basic idea is that low turnout voters will turn out, if you will, for local candidates when those candidates have local roots and when those local candidates reach out to them, listen to their concerns, respond to their concerns, and have connection with them. And it's really these local candidates, in this case, the legislature candidates, that have the on the ground efforts. Now, they can't get out and knock doors, but they're still the ones that are getting around virtually in the community, and they're ones that are known in the community. The other thing is that you may not think that this is such a huge effect, and I'm not saying it's really huge, actually, but these are all going to be the statewide elections in terms of this power up of using the legislature to, as leverage to win for Biden and to win for Cunningham. These are going to be close races, and a small amount, like 0.5%, could very well be make the difference. So that's why we think this is particularly good leverage. The other thing is that we have gone to great lengths, to painstaking lengths, to identify people that we think are really high quality candidates that are appealing to their constituents and that are winnable. And we have picked, again, this sort of sweet spot or mid-tier area where we're not going for the ones that are most likely to win. We're going for the ones in the middle that we think collectively can make the difference. One other thing to realize about North Carolina is that the African-American turnout is particularly pivotal. And that's particularly true in rural eastern North Carolina. North Carolina has the African-American is about 23% of the electorate. And they've not actually turned out all that well. They turned out well for Obama in 8 and to some extent in 12, but we didn't win in 12. And then more recently, they actually haven't turned out that much. And we have purposefully selected candidates that are positioned in this particular region, not entirely, but many of them. Several of them are African-American, but several of them are also white with good roots in the African-American community. And again, I don't want to make this too complicated, but again, it's sort of important to realize, in addition to raising money for these candidates directly, we have a separate track where we are supporting videos that they can use in digital outreach to their constituents and voters. You know, basically, for those of you who are not familiar with this term digital in this context, it basically means messaging through Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, just the internet. People who use the internet see these things all the time. And we think it's a terribly important part of programming. And so we have a separate initiative where we are developing digital ads in kind for free for these candidates. And it's a real lifeline for them because they can't get out and knock doors. That's been their strategy, was to get out and knock every door that they could in general. They can't do that. So this is sort of the next best thing that they can do. And we're doing it, and we think it's synergistic with their efforts. The window of people that we're supporting is actually a bit wider than just the 12 candidates that you're gonna meet. And by the way, it also includes, in addition to legislature candidates, just because we had the opportunity, it includes 4 African-American statewide candidates, including the African-American candidate for Lieutenant Governor and for the Supreme Court Chief Justice. Okay, so now I've thrown a lot at you, and I know that, and I maybe should have prepared you a little bit more, but that's kind of the way I do this. And I'm hoping that everybody is pretty well convinced, if not completely convinced. But the fact is, there's actually more. Oh, sorry, one more point on this slide, which is this key point that Aaron made, and also Chris. Small amounts of money really make a huge difference for these people. You know, they get ignored, they're sort of overlooked. They try to raise money through their local contacts and so forth. And this early money is really crucial for their candidates, for them to do their basic efforts, mail, polling, digital, as I mentioned. But there's also this funny thing about politics that when you raise money, people give you more money. Money begets money in politics. And so we really, and we've actually heard candidates say this, that because we gave them money, other people were noticing them and giving them money. The other thing related to that is that these people spend an inordinate amount of time calling up people and asking for money. And if we can free them up from that and allow them to spend the time as it should be done, which is to reach out to their constituents, then they can have a much better shot at winning. And you'll see in a little video we're going to show you in a bit, there's actually one candidate that makes that point. All right, so there's yet another slide, which is that even if none of this were true, the bottom up or any of that stuff, if we just had the opportunity to turn North Carolina blue by winning the legislature, as we did in Virginia, it would be a great thing for them and indirectly for us, and we should want that for them. So this is just sort of the agenda. These are all basically all the things that have happened in Virginia. It's amazing all that's happened in Virginia since it turned blue. And all these things can happen. I hear candidates talking about all these things when I talk to them and visit their website. And my view is once North Carolina actually turns blue, it's going to stay blue. And part of that is because one of the reasons it's so red in terms of representation is because of the gerrymandering. And that's another reason why it's important for them, but also for us. North Carolina is a state that in 2018, a very even number of Democrats and Republicans votes went for the House. So it was about 50-50 split. And yet, of the 13 members of the House, 10 are Republicans and only 3 are Democrats. That's to a large extent because of the severe gerrymandering. We need to correct. That's part of the reason why the Republicans have had in the past such a stranglehold on the U.S. House, and we need to, we need to deal with that. And related to that, we want to end voter suppression and support fairer elections in North Carolina. We can talk more about in the Q&A. North Carolina has voter suppression. It's actually not the worst in voter suppression, but it could be a whole lot better in terms of voting access. And then the coup de grace, in a way, is that by supporting these legislative candidates and electing them, we can be building the bench for the future. I mean, we sort of neglected this for the last 2 decades, in a way, as a Democratic Party. But we need to have people that can then progress onward to higher office. And Cal Cunningham was a state senator. Barack Obama was a state senator 4 years before he was elected president. Okay, so this is just a little schematic, just to get across the point, in case there's any doubt. We're trying to do these legislature campaigns for really 3 reasons. Because we want a blue US Senate, we want a blue White House with those 15 electoral votes, and we want a blue legislature. Okay, now who are these candidates? Well, there are 12 of them here. I can't talk about them all in a lot of detail. We'll talk a bit about 3 of them at least. The top 4 are running for the House, the top 8, sorry, the bottom 4 for the Senate. All these people are challengers, by the way. So this is part of our play to win strategy. We figure that incumbents can raise their own money, and they often generally can, and they'll can take care of themselves. But just to give you a sense, a little bit of why, of who they are, there are 5 PhD, people who have 5 PhDs amongst these folks. There are lawyers, there are teachers, there's a political scientist, there's a social worker, there's a nurse, there's some retired military, there's a urban planner, there's a small business owner and a tree farmer. And some of these people have more than one of these things. And, you know, we selected these people pretty carefully based on voting history, what the Democratic Party folks were telling us, the quality of the candidates as that I judged. I like to get out and kind of kick the tires and talk to them and so forth, but also how much money they had and how much money is needed for these kind of things. And, you know, I will say that unlike these presidential races and Senate races, if we can raise $40, $50, $60, even $70,000 for these candidates, it really moves the needle. It really changes the entire complexion of what they're doing. Okay, so I'm going to show you a video first of Donna Lake, who's a state Senate candidate in Eastern North Carolina, and then later Amy Steele, who's a House candidate in near Charlotte, in one of the exurbs of Charlotte. And the thing about the Donna Lake video is that this was something unsolicited she just sent to us. You may think that we sort of bribed her to do this, but in fact, she did this on her own. One other thing about showing videos through Zoom is, like, a lot of times the quality is not great. So just be reassured that in real life, these videos actually work a lot better. I will say that while I'm at it, that the video for Amy Steele was something that we produced for her under this digital initiative. So here we go with Donna Lake.
Hello, Jim. This is Donna Lake. I just wanted to send you a quick message. I can't thank you and 31st Street for the tremendous financial support that you have provided me over the last 8 to 9 days. It has blown me away. I've been able to do so much more without worrying about being on the phone 10 hours a day asking for $5. I've been in the community. Today I was in an African-American community virtually with a Zoom, talking to women and empowerment. In addition, I'm feeding children and getting out with voters to find out what the real needs are. By able to reach out to the community and knowing that I have the support of 31st Street and others, that has taken some of the pressure off me as a new candidate, so I can get out my name among the voters by having them see what I can do, how I can listen to them and support what they need in our community. This is the first time a female is running in this area, and the tremendous response I'm getting by the community members is tremendous. They are tired of the old way of thinking. They want excitement, energy, and change, and someone that's going to champion the change we need. So thank you so much, Jim. I just really, I'm amazed and just blown away by it. And thank you. And if you talk to any other members, please thank them on my behalf. Thank you. Donna Lake, running for North Carolina Senate, District 7, Wayne and Lenore County, an hour out of Raleigh in rural East Carolina. Thank you.
Okay, so now I'm going to shift to Amy Steele. And again, this was something that we produced for her virtually. We didn't do any on-site filming, but it also speaks for itself. Uh-oh.
Hello, Jim.
Wait a minute. Here we go.
My story starts, like so many others, as a little girl who grew up poor. I moved from Army base to Army base and was raised by my grandmother, who worked as the help for local white families. Even when times were tough for us, she taught me to always help others. So that's what I used my quality public school education to do. Lift myself from poverty, become a teacher, and then a principal, so I could keep helping others, just like my grandmother taught. I even married the man who proudly leads my church as our pastor, and was able to raise a family of 5 right here in North Carolina. I've never forgotten where I came from or how education lifted me to my full potential. That's why I'm running for State House. Our class sizes are too big. Teacher pay is too small, and the rules are being made by people who never stepped foot in a classroom. Our kids need a voice fighting for them in Raleigh. They deserve a real shot at success, no matter their zip code or their circumstances in life. So one day they can proudly tell their stories, just like I'm telling mine.
Okay, so now I'm going to turn over the proceedings to my very competent, articulate, and dedicated sister, Mary Pence.
Hello. My name is Mary Shelton Pence. I'm one of the ordinary people who is radicalized by the election of our current president and the people who have enabled him. So I just want to say that we are living in an extraordinary moment right now. After, speaking for myself, after 3.5 years of despair and anger and disbelief and numbness, suddenly I see reasons to be hopeful. You know, one of them, there are not many young people on this call, but it is for our young people that we are doing this. And I see our young people on the streets protesting, being politically active, making a difference, involved, and that gives me hope. And the second thing that gives me hope is what's been happening with our military leaders recently. You know, just within the last really 2 or 3 weeks, our military leaders have been distancing themselves from that person in the White House, and I just find that extraordinary. And the third thing that gives me hope is what I'm going to call the president's increasing desperation. And I'm guessing that you all have felt that as well. So as we try to get our minds around this extraordinary shift, I think we also have to be very careful that we don't become complacent. Because this is the moment, June 24th, 5 months from the election, when we have to use our money in the most important and significant and impactful way that we possibly can. So my husband Dan and I are both retired. And in the past few months, we have stretched to contribute $18,000 to this North Carolina slate. And my brother Jim's going to put that North Carolina slate back up again. I just love to look at this slate because I like the diversity and I like the intelligence and vitality that I see in their faces. But I'd like to focus in particular on Virginia Cox Doherty, who's in the top row, the second from the left. We've contributed $3,000 to Virginia Cox Doherty. Dr. Cox Doherty is, I believe, I know, perfectly positioned to accomplish exactly what Jim described. That is the local, reaching at the local level to increase the vote for Biden and Cunningham. So Dr. Cox Doherty's district is 40% African American. It's in that rural eastern part of the state, a lot of farmers, a lot of people who are very poor. And her voters are the overlooked, low turnout voters to whom national and statewide races may not speak. But these same voters know Virginia Cox Doherty. She grew up in their part of the state. She's been a teacher and a principal in their town. And she's been a volunteer in a diverse group of charitable organizations like the United Way. And they will turn out to vote for her. When she spoke to Jim earlier this week, this is what she said, and I quote, it's actually last week now that I think about it. She said, there's a lot of Black folks here who are not voting, and I aim to get them. And I believe she will. My request is that you join Dan and me in making the most significant contribution that you can make to this slate. And the reason, both for all of you and for my husband and me, is so that no matter what the outcome is on November 3rd, that we would all be able to say, I did a lot. I did as much as I could. Thank you so very much. And now, Barbara.
I am going to speak and close on behalf of all of us co-hosts. And for starters, we would like to thank you all for sticking with us. I've been working in elections since 2004, and I am so impressed with these 31st Street folks and so impressed with their work. And I have to tell you, it's such a thrill to work with them. We're so proud of what's happened in Virginia since 2019. Unfortunately, our times today make me think of when I was a little girl and I was memorizing Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. My heart would swell with, now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any other nation, so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. Right now, we're engaged again, and it's a battle to restore our country as we knew it. It was a nation of toleration and decency. It honored the rule of law, led the international community, and we all valued the arts, science, the environment, and education. We were a beacon of hope. Now, our battlefield is full of those who have died of COVID, many unnecessarily, often because of neglect and lies. So we can't do everything, but each of us can do something. Our diverse slate of candidates will bring out new and sporadic voters to vote Democratic all the way up the ballot. It will deliver 15 precious electoral votes for Joe Biden. And not only that, we can flip the state legislature. That is a legislature which a federal court held suppressed Black votes with surgical precision. How better can we all say Black lives matter than by changing that? So today, please help us to reach our goal of $25,000. We co-hosts have all made our contributions, and they were substantial for each of us, whatever our comfort level is. And we ask for you to do the same. Please dig deeply, contribute as much as you can, and help to save this nation. In closing, before turning back to Aaron Hamburger for your questions, we all want to really thank you for being with us here today, listening to this masterclass, and helping this nation. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Barbara. Thanks for your closing, and thanks to everybody for your attention. So we will now take some questions from all of you. And one question that actually came in privately to me was, how exactly does Act Blue work? How do you make a donation, and what's the structure there? And by the way, in the chat, you'll see a link to go to our Act Blue page. So I'm just going to share my screen to show you what happens when you press that link. So you will see, you'll come to this landing page with our logo on it, 31st Street Swig Left. None of the money that you donate comes to us. We do not see the money. We do not touch the money. It funnels right through this page directly to the campaigns. So let's say you decide that you want to donate, you could choose any of these amounts here. And again, whatever is within your comfort zone stretch, that's individual. Let's say you go for $1,000. That amount is going to be automatically allocated equally to all 12 of the candidates that are currently on our North Carolina slate. But let's say that you have an affection for one candidate, or you want to weight that donation differently, then just go ahead to this blue link here. You'll click on that, and then you can allocate the amounts as you see fit, 80% to one, 20 to another, etc. So that should answer that question.
Aaron, could I add something to that? Just so people realize, if you donate to the entire slate, that actually comes through as 12 different contributions in your credit card. So don't let that bother you when if you see some amount different from what you thought you were contributing.